In the modern history of African politics, generational shifts have always been tied to both crisis and opportunity. From the wave of independence in the 1960s to the present day, the continent has been searching for a new generation of leaders, young enough to be bold, but wise enough to complete the unfinished story. Today, the answer is emerging. Across Africa, leaders under 40 are beginning to step onto the political stage. They do not follow the old formulas. Many come from the military, social movements, or academia. What unites them is their ability to speak the language of the youth, to understand both their aspirations and their fears. Within this movement, Burkina Faso has become a focal point. At just 34 years old, Ibrahim Traoré assumed leadership of the country. His rise surprised the world, but for the youth of Burkina Faso, it felt inevitable. A generation weary of outdated models finally saw itself reflected in the face of its president. What makes Traoré remarkable is not simply his age, but his priorities. Instead of focusing solely on security or diplomacy, he placed education at the heart of national reform. In a landmark speech, he declared, "A nation cannot truly be free if its youth remain chained to an obsolete education system." The message resonated because it exposed a painful truth. Burkina Faso's schools, like those of many African nations, still carry the imprint of colonial systems. They train generations to memorize and follow, but not to innovate or build independent economies. Across Africa, more than 60% of the population is under 25. This is both a gift and a threat. If left without skills and jobs, the youth could become a burden, fueling unrest. But if properly trained, they represent the world's youngest, most dynamic workforce, a demographic weapon unmatched anywhere else. That is why Traoré's speech was more than domestic policy. It was a call to the entire continent. Will we empower our youth, or will we waste this historic opportunity? Observers quickly compared him to Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary who once led Burkina Faso at 33. If Sankara emphasized social justice and anti-imperialism, then Traoré emphasizes education as the key to long-term independence. What sets Traoré apart is his holistic vision. He does not talk only about classrooms. He speaks of a comprehensive future, where education connects to technology, agriculture, culture, and identity. In his view, an authentic education system cannot simply copy Western models. It must reflect the realities of Burkina Faso, a nation where most youth grow up in rural communities, face climate challenges, and dream of self-reliance. For many analysts, this was not just a speech. It was a roadmap for a new African generation, one where knowledge, skills, and belief in themselves become weapons stronger than guns. In his landmark address, Traoré outlined 3 core pillars of reform. Curriculum transformation. So students do more than memorize. They learn to think, create, and solve real problems. Teacher training and empowerment, because no system can succeed if those leading the classroom lack skills and motivation. Technology integration, to bridge the digital divide and connect Burkina Faso to global knowledge. Curriculum transformation, from textbook to real life. For decades, Burkina Faso's school curriculum largely mirrored colonial-era France. Students mastered theory but lacked practical skills. A child could solve complex equations, yet know nothing of modern farming, entrepreneurship, or African history. Traoré insists it is time to cut away that outdated legacy. The new curriculum will integrate agriculture, technology, business management, and African history, fields rooted in reality and cultural pride. As he once said, "If a student knows every European river but cannot cultivate his own land, then our education system has failed." Teachers, gatekeepers of the future. No reform can succeed without teachers. For years, Burkinabe educators have struggled with low pay, outdated training, and poor facilities. The result? Declining motivation and limited classroom impact. Traoré's plan includes a nationwide retraining program, equipping teachers with modern pedagogy, child psychology, and digital skills. At the same time, the government pledges to raise base salaries and provide financial support, signaling that teaching is not just a job, but a national mission. As Traore emphasized, teachers must be honored as the builders of our nation. Technology, bridging the divide. In the digital age, education cannot ignore technology. Yet in rural Burkina Faso, many schools lack internet access or computers. Traore's Digital Schools Initiative aims to provide affordable tablets, build online resources in local languages, and extend internet coverage to remote areas. This way, a student in Penny or Kaya can access the same knowledge as one in Ouagadougou. He stresses, technology is not just entertainment, it is the doorway for Burkina Faso's youth to enter the world. Why the urgency? Why does Traore place education at the core? The answer is demographic reality. Each year, over 300,000 young Burkinabe enter the labor force. Without skills, they face unemployment, poverty, or recruitment by extremist groups. But with training, they can become the builders of a new economy. Analysts call this Burkina Faso's demographic window of opportunity. But that window will not stay open forever. Miss it, and the chance is gone. That is why Traore sees education not as an option, but as a battle for the nation's survival. If reforming curricula, teachers, and technology are the pillars inside the classroom, Traore also understands this truth. Education does not end at the school gates. Like much of Africa, Burkina Faso faces a stark reality. Every year, hundreds of thousands of young people leave school yet cannot find work. A diploma alone is no guarantee of a livelihood. That is why Traore's reforms extend beyond textbooks, emphasizing practical skills, vocational training, and entrepreneurship. Vocational training from agriculture to light industry. Over 70% of Burkinabe work in agriculture. Yet most youth receive no formal training in modern methods. They farm as their parents did, low yields, vulnerable to climate change. Traore's plan establishes vocational centers for agriculture, where youth learn to use machinery, smart irrigation, and sustainable practices. But the vision goes further. Centers also train in mechanics, textiles, construction, and food processing, trades that can create immediate employment. The goal, every young Burkinabe, even without university, should hold a skill to feed themselves and their families. Entrepreneurship and innovation. In a youthful economy, entrepreneurship is not optional. It is essential. Traore knows the state cannot create jobs for all. Instead, youth must be encouraged to create jobs for themselves. The government has launched youth startup funds, offering microloans alongside training in management, marketing, and finance. A group of students with an idea for agro-processing can access seed capital to open a small workshop. A team of young engineers can receive support to develop a tech app. The shift is mental as much as financial, from seeking employment to becoming employers. This is how Burkina Faso transitions from dependent nation to creative nation, life skills and civic responsibility. Another cornerstone of Traore's vision, education must produce not only workers, but citizens. Youth need life skills, personal finance, communication, teamwork, critical thinking. They also need to understand their rights and responsibilities as Burkinabe. Community projects, extracurricular activities, and even youth service programs are being woven into the system, aiming to produce a generation skilled in their trade, but also committed to society and nation, linking education to the economy. The heart of Traore's thinking is simple. Education must connect directly to the real economy. Training without opportunities is wasted effort. That is why the government is partnering with local businesses to design apprenticeships and internships. Small industrial zones are being built near training centers, so students can work while they learn. In agriculture, youth cooperatives are being formed to connect farmers straight to markets. When education and the economy are linked, the outcome is not just diplomas, but jobs, enterprises, and sustainable growth. No reform is ever easy, especially when it touches the very foundations of a nation. Ibrahim Traoré's educational reform carries lofty ambitions, but it also faces harsh realities. The financial dilemma. Education demands heavy investment. Schools, equipment, teacher salaries, digital infrastructure. Burkina Faso remains one of the world's poorest countries with limited public funds. The pressing question is, where will the money come from? Traore has stressed repeatedly, if we can afford weapons, then we can afford books. His message is not only to the state budget, but also to private investors, the diaspora, and regional partners. Weak infrastructure. Many rural schools in Burkina Faso lack electricity, clean water, or internet. Some still hold classes under thatched roofs with makeshift desks. In this context, the idea of digital schools may seem unrealistic. But Traore frames this as a challenge to be solved, not an excuse to stop. The government has begun small but decisive steps. Solar panels for schools, telecom expansion, and community learning centers where resources are shared. Social consensus. Reform requires public trust. Changing what children learn, and how, is not always easy. Many parents worry. Will their children still be competitive? Will they fall behind international standards? To build confidence, the government has launched pilot schools under the new model, inviting parents to see results firsthand. As students become more confident, skilled, and engaged, public support is slowly growing. The long horizon. Even with funding, infrastructure, and consensus, education is a long journey. Results do not appear in a year, or even in one political term. They take 10 to 20 years as new generations come of age. This poses a major challenge for young leaders like Traore, under constant pressure to deliver quick wins. Yet here lies his distinction. Traore does not promise miracles overnight. He speaks of a generational investment. Time and again he has stressed that this reform is not just for his term in office, but for the future of Burkina Faso and Africa itself. Early signs of progress. Despite the obstacles, early indicators are promising. Pilot schools with reformed curricula report higher student engagement and lower dropout rates. Vocational programs have already helped hundreds of youth secure employment after graduation. Digital initiatives are beginning to attract regional and international partners. These signs prove one thing: the reform is possible, provided there is persistence and unity. When Ibrahim Traoré speaks of education, he is not merely talking about textbooks or new classrooms. He is describing a civilizational shift, a future where youth are not spectators of history, but the very ones who write it. Africa's greatest resource, its youth. Africa is the youngest continent on Earth. While much of the world faces aging populations, Africa's median age is just 19. This means one thing: the future of the world depends in part on how Africa invests in its youth today. Given the chance, these young Africans can become leaders, engineers, doctors, entrepreneurs, the architects of a prosperous continent. But left behind, they risk becoming a lost generation, trapped in poverty, unrest, and conflict. Architects of change. Traoré has often said, "The youth are not the future, they are the present." For him, every policy must be designed to empower young people now, through education, entrepreneurship, and political participation. The new classrooms, vocational centers, and youth startups are not just programs, they are the foundations of a self-reliant Africa. The youth are no longer only dreaming, they are building. A message beyond Burkina Faso. What makes Traoré's vision powerful is that it extends beyond Burkina Faso. He urges all of Africa to confront the truth. Without investing in youth, the continent will remain behind. But if it does, the world will be forced to see Africa differently. This turns his message into a regional call to action. From Ghana to Nigeria to South Africa, millions of young people can recognize themselves in his words. A call to action. At the heart of this vision is a call to everyone. No one can stand aside. Parents must support children in pursuing new skills. Teachers must embrace change. Businesses must open doors to interns and youth entrepreneurs. Governments must continue to invest with long-term commitment. Above all, young people themselves must believe. Believe they are not only followers but leaders in the making. The future begins today. A generation properly educated, skilled, and confident will become the architects of a new Africa. An Africa no longer spoken of as potential, but as a force in action, a continent rising. As Traoré once declared, "The future is not something we wait for. The future is something we are building right now."